Greetings and welcome to a Saturday edition of Countdown to His Coming for Saturday, September 23rd, 2023. Hey, I wanted to give you an update based on what was going on at the G20 summit that's just taken place and see if there were some things there pointing toward biblical prophecy. And oh wow, we're there. Matter of fact, it was just an explosion of truth hitting us right in the face about some things going on right now, pushing us toward the kind of government the Bible predicted would be in charge before Jesus returns. Now, I want to call your attention to, because I'm doing a much shorter video, I tried a longer one and found that I was dealing with some issues that would probably mean censorship on one or two networks. So instead, I'm just going to tell you to go read the article. Check it out in the Epoch Times, which you can get in paper or online. And don't miss the article in the opinion section entitled Global Government Governance is Here. And then in parentheses, there's an almost. In other words, it's on the doorstep. It's written by a guy named James Goris. James is the author of The China Crisis, and he writes a blog called thebananarepublican.com. Boy, that sounds interesting. He's based in Southern California, but he writes in such a way that I tell you what, he really brings it home, and some things he says I can't even say on my channel, but he's accurate. He hits a home run with this. Now, what am I talking about when we talk about the kind of government the world is facing before Jesus comes back? Well, you go back to the prophecies of Daniel chapter 7, a second coming passage, by the way. You can't miss it. It's not a rehash of Daniel chapter 2. It is a passage about the way the world is going to look from Jerusalem's eyes before Jesus returns, before the Ancient of Days sets up his throne and establishes it. And the final beast that Daniel saw in that prophecy was one unlike any other. And the angel explains to Daniel what that beast was like. This final beast empire will attempt to control the whole world. Now, how in the world can you do that? Other conquerors have tried. They found that that's just impossible, isn't it? Well, guess what? Not in an age of computerization and artificial intelligence. Everything is now changing. And because of that, we can see Daniel's prophecy coming to pass. John, in chapter 13 of the book of Revelation, has an even expanded version of that same prophecy. He sees a beast rising, and that beast comes up with the attempt to control everything in the world, your ability to buy, to sell, to exist. And he has at his disposal something that some preachers have called a false prophet. But guess what? The Bible talks about this secondary beast having an icon, an image, as it is said. And this word icon in the Greek means something that does not have life. It means that it's perhaps stone, it's rock, or maybe it's something that's been put together more like a robot or an artificial intelligence. And it talks about how this beast is able to give life, spirit to this inanimate object, and it speaks. And wow, here we are living in the day where not only are the robots like Sophia and others speaking to us, but now we're being told that their artificial intelligence will soon surpass human intelligence, and we'll have to treat them like gods. Scary, isn't it? Well, what's the world saying about this stuff? You'd think there might be some resistance to it. Hardly. Matter of fact, at the G20 summit that just took place, it seems like everybody's embracing the idea of this world government and plugging AI right into it. Now, Elon Musk remarked this week in an interview that he's scared to death of this whole idea. If you're supposed to start utilizing AI as if you're using it, how do you know that it's not using you? Good question. Well, as we look at some of the things that took place, I want you to listen to James in this article as I quote from the Epoch Times. He said, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen thinks that, hey, the big plan is already being implemented. It needs to happen and it needs to speed up. What is the big plan? Well, in a post on Twitter, which we now know as X, and in a statement at the G20 summit, she called for a United Nations panel to control artificial intelligence and digital public infrastructures, just as the UN's International Panel on Climate Change recommends, if not dictates, climate policies. In other words, they're trying to hand everything over to the UN. Our own government just said that the World Health Organization from the UN is going to be given power in our own nation. Did you vote for that? Power to control drug policies, and if some kind of pandemic, epidemic, something else happens, we want to be under WHO control? Really? Listen, friends, we didn't vote for that, but guess what? It's being handed to them. Now, he goes on to write in the article, whether from the WHO leadership, the EU, or others, the call for UN global governance over fundamental and individual rights, responsibilities, and behavior comes from the highest levels of governing institutions. Now, I want you to listen carefully to this next sentence. Don't miss it. If you have to rewind and listen to it again, listen carefully. The trend toward supranational jurisdiction and control over supposedly free national citizens is already well established and is accelerating. This is what our world is becoming. It's becoming that so rapidly that you hardly know that it has been taking place. Matter of fact, the EU already has such a digital background. They have a digital certificate to track all kinds of things. It was exposed during the it was imposed rather during the last pandemic. They haven't gotten rid of it. They've only expanded it. They want to keep track of everything you do, everything about you. They want to be able to say whether you can travel or not. It just goes on and on. And this particular leader stated that 51 countries on 4 continents have already adopted this plan. What are we talking about? The author here says this is so disturbing on so many levels that one can hardly know where to begin. He talks about the deception in the language and all the distortions that are being put out. He said, in another exercise of this distortion, Ms. von der Leyen praised the Director General of the World Health Organization for its adoption of these digital certificates to track your health and what shots you have and haven't had, praising this, saying that the WHO uses it as a global standard to facilitate mobility in times of health threats. Now, he says this is classic Orwellian doublespeak, where the words mean the exact opposite of how they sound. The purpose of the digital certificates and the digital identity that are soon to follow isn't to add to people's freedom, but to restrict it. These digital identifications will include a driver's license, a personal and all your personal and medical information. It'll act as a passport. It's hardly likely that this is not going to be abused by those in power, especially if you don't agree with where they are politically. My friends, it's already going on. We already have political prisoners in the United States, as in many other countries. If you resist this, you may be one of those blackballed. You may be like some of those in China that found if their words in some way had disagreed with the government on certain things, and then they tried to get on a train, bus, a plane to go somewhere, they'd discover that the government had said, no, you can't travel. You're too dangerous because you don't like what we're doing up here in Beijing. And so guess what? Not only can you not travel, but guess what? You may get pink slipped in here before long because we can also tell the company to fire you. Do we want that kind of society anywhere else in the world? Well, guess what? There are some folks who think we need to rush toward it so we can control all of these people. Well, the global elites here seem to have in mind that their way of doing this and being able to have the ability to control the world's population is now here. It's called artificial intelligence. Matter of fact, as we get to the very last paragraph of James's article, again, I can't read the whole thing for you. You can chase it down for yourself. But he says the global elites will use AI to control the digital ID infrastructure. And that brings us to the United Nations cornering the market and using AI. Wow. If this doesn't scare you, I don't know what would scare you. The fact that artificial intelligence would be co-opted by the United Nations for their 2030 agenda, which quite frankly, my friends, will completely destroy the planet. It's the fulfillment of the green kingdom, the green horse riding, that says, oh, because of environmental concerns, environmental this, environmental that, we're going to do, and then you start listing all these things that will destroy your ability to produce food, destroy farming, take the meat off your table, replace it with bugs. They have so many ideas that are wacko that, listen, if the average person sat down and just looked at that list, they'd say, why are we even letting these people occupy space in the United States of America? But guess what? It's because so many of our elites agree with the agenda. In summation, he writes, the rights accorded to us from and by the U.S. Constitution will go away and be replaced by global governance by the likes of the UN, the WHO, the World Economic Forum, all of these wackos that nobody elected. They're going to be running our lives. Does it sound familiar? It does, because it lines up completely with biblical prophecy. My friends, the Word of God coming to life all around us. As Jesus said, don't you be afraid of these things that are going to happen in the last days, because I've told you everything ahead of time. And he did tell us some disturbing things. And among the things that he told us was that a pattern of lawlessness would even make the love of many people grow cold. And in the end, one of the leaders of this world organization is going to be called the man of lawlessness. That's the title the Apostle Paul gives to him. We sometimes call him the Antichrist, but remember, even John said many antichrists are already gone out in the world, and through history, we've seen many of these. The ones that stand up and say, either follow me or follow this new philosophy or follow something else, because no, there is no Christ, God has no Son, and no, you shouldn't follow any religion that believes that. That's the spirit of Antichrist. And right now we have those in control of our very lives that have that same philosophy. And there's going to be one to rise who will be the head of that entire movement. He's going to take control over all of these 7 heads and 10 kings, the millionaires and billionaires that are trying to run the world, and these particular governmental leaders. And who's going to take control over it? One who's called the man of lawlessness. So if you think that what's been going on in our nation and our world regarding lawlessness is perhaps over, or maybe if we'll just elect the right people next fall, it'll be over, my friends, you have another thing coming, because it's a movement driven by Satan himself, and it's coming for all of us. What's the answer? The answer, my friend, is to know the ultimate leader, the ultimate king of this planet who's returning. His name's Jesus Christ. When you follow him and you become one of his disciples, you have the best protection out there for what is coming. Now, yeah, I know you need to take care of yourself, your families, do the things that are prudent, perhaps even go a different place. Some of you need to escape some of those hellholes that have once were some of our best cities in America. You need to get your family out of there if you really want to protect them. But there are only a certain number of things you can do physically to win this battle that will not take at all if you don't know the source. If you don't know the Lord Jesus Christ, if you don't have a personal relationship with God, that's what's going to get you through all the way to the end. Well, hey, thanks for spending some time with me this morning. We'll do this again next week on a Saturday as we have another countdown to his coming. But hey, worship somewhere with God's people tomorrow, and join me every Monday through Friday for Wake Up in the Word. God bless you. I'll see you then.